Atlas bear. Some ancient animals lived closer to human civilization than we imagine, and the first one takes us straight into the bloodiest arenas on Earth. The Atlas bear was the only bear species native to Africa, smaller than a brown bear, but far more irritable, mostly because its daily schedule eventually included get captured by Romans. It stood roughly 2 meters tall on its hind legs, heavy enough to ruin your day, light enough to ship across the Mediterranean. Found across North Africa, where the Roman world reached into the mountains, the Romans dragged Atlas bears into gladiator shows. The bears did not give consent. Being thrown into an arena wasn't a career choice, and because they were smaller than European brown bears, Romans treated them like starter bears. Crowds saw entertainment. If you met one outside the arena, you weren't a gladiator, just a civilian suddenly in the wrong genre. Atlas bears were stocky, territorial, and famously bad at calming down once annoyed. Hunters described them as fast, aggressive, and willing to chase humans much farther than any modern bear would bother. By the late 1800s, hunting and habitat loss finished what the arenas started. The Atlas bear vanished, leaving North Africa without a single native bear species. Aurochs. Next comes an animal that technically still exists in our fields today, but only because we turned its descendants into pets. The original version was not pet-compatible. The aurochs was the wild ancestor of modern cattle, huge, muscular, and unpredictable. A fully grown bull stood up to 1.8 meters at the shoulder, weighed up to 1,000 kilos, and carried horns almost a meter long. Modern cows look like they were designed on easy mode. Aurochs were set to nightmare, seen across early farming cultures from the Nile to the Near East. Hunting an aurochs was basically a ritual with a built-in obituary. Modern cows say, moo. Aurochs said, step closer and reconsider your life choices. Gladiators trained with swords. Aurochs trained with the confidence of an animal that weighed half a car. Their horns weren't just long. They angled forward with perfect geometry for turning hunters into statistics. People rarely faced an aurochs alone, unless they were in a hurry to become a story other people told. Ancient cultures sacrificed them, painted them, worshipped them, and eventually domesticated them. The aurochs did not appreciate the update. It took thousands of years before cattle softened enough to manage without losing half the village. By 1627, the last one died in Poland. Everything we call cattle today is just a softened remix of an animal that spent most of its existence reminding humans they were not at the top of the food chain. Syrian Lion. The Syrian lion looked smaller than today's African lions, but compensated with the temperament of a badly managed royal advisor. It stood around 1 meter tall at the shoulder and carried a short mane, giving it a lean, "I already dislike you" outline. This lion lived in ancient Mesopotamia, today's Iraq and Syria. For thousands of years, Syrian lions filled temple carvings, mythological scenes, and royal propaganda. Assyrian kings rode out with chariots and archers, because fighting a lion that woke up annoyed was not something you did alone. By around 100 AD, the lion that once symbolized power across entire kingdoms had quietly disappeared, leaving only the stone carvings behind. And later in this video, you'll meet the lion that made even this one look underqualified. Mammoth. Most people imagine mammoths as pure Ice Age creatures, but some survived far longer than expected. The last population lived on Wrangel Island until around 1650 BC, which means mammoths were still walking around while ancient Egypt was already building dynasties. The world was moving forward. The mammoth simply didn't make it into the next chapter. A woolly mammoth stood up to 3.5 meters tall at the shoulder and weighed between 4 and 6 tons. Its curving tusks could reach 4 meters across, about the width of a small car, and exactly the right size to tell predators, "Not today." Bronze Age cultures traded mammoth tusks as luxury goods. Mammoth ivory traveled across continents long after the animals were gone from the mainland. Humans used mammoth bones for shelters, tools, and ceremonial structures. Hunters went after them in organized groups because hunting several tons of animal required teamwork, and at least one person who could run faster than the others. Despite their size, mammoths were social and intelligent. They navigated harsh climates, long migrations, and predators far more dangerous than humans. Cave lion. The cave lion was the kind of predator that makes every other lion look like it should update its resume. Bigger, heavier, and built like someone tried to combine a lion with a tank, this Ice Age giant stood up to 1.3 meters at the shoulder and weighed up to 350 kilos. Maneless, muscular, and intimidating without even trying. Spread across Europe, from France to the Eurasian plains. Early humans painted cave lions on walls because drawing them was safer than meeting them. These weren't decorative doodles. They were survival notes. It was the predator of predator encounters. The kind of animal you told stories about so your group didn't wander beyond the firelight. Bones show that cave lions hunted megafauna, going after animals that already looked too big to hunt. Humans were absolutely on the menu, just not the preferred one. If the Syrian lion was a boss fight, the cave lion was the DLC you didn't ask for, released without patch notes, and much harder to uninstall. By around 2000 BC, shifting climates and declining prey pushed the cave lion out of existence. But the cave paintings scattered across Europe are still there, prehistoric warning labels carved into stone. North African elephant. The North African elephant wasn't the giant you picture from documentaries. It was smaller, around 2.3 to 2.7 meters tall at the shoulder, and weighed 2 to 4 tons. What it lacked in size, it made up for in attitude. Ancient writers described it as fast, fiery, and extremely uncooperative. Terrible pet, excellent war machine. Native to North Africa and the Nubian kingdoms south of Egypt, were these elephants used by Carthage and Numidia, the early states that weaponized wildlife. Hannibal's army famously marched them across the Alps. The elephants did not appreciate the itinerary. These animals fought in battles across North Africa and southern Europe, but their numbers dropped fast. Overhunting, capture for warfare, and shrinking habitat pushed them toward extinction. By around 300 AD, the elephant that once carried empires on its back was gone. What survived were stories from soldiers who claimed that facing one of these elephants felt like meeting a moving wall that had decided it was done tolerating your existence. History didn't need fantasy creatures. Reality was doing the job just fine. Stay curious and see you in the next episode.